Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Today, inshallah, we will talk about the 6 kingdoms and we'll give an overview of each kingdom and what it's all about. In the next subsequent chapters, we'll talk about each of these kingdoms individually and reasonably exhaustively. So by the time you're done with these series of chapters, you'll have a very good understanding of the living things that are around you, inshallah. So if you recall from our previous discussions, all living things are classified into 6 different kingdoms, so 6 different broad categories. And these might change in the future as we discover new living things which do not conform to the traits of these individual different kingdoms. But at the present time, there are 6 different kingdoms. And if you also recall, 2 of these kingdoms were dedicated to bacteria. And they're called Kingdom Archaebacteria, ancient bacteria, and Kingdom Eubacteria, or true bacteria. So 2 of the 6 kingdoms are dedicated to bacteria. That also speaks to their rich heritage, so to speak. These were the first living things to evolve on the planet, according to science. And if you were to follow an evolutionary line, so to speak, according to science at least, what evolved from these basic living things were the protists. And protists are a little bit more advanced than the Archaebacteria or Eubacteria. And beyond the protists are more advanced living things. And these were, if you recall, Kingdom Fungi, Kingdom Plantae, and Kingdom Animalia, or Fungi Kingdom, Plant Kingdom, and the Animal Kingdom. So these are the 6 big categories of living things, and this you kind of have to know. Kingdom Archaebacteria, Kingdom Eubacteria, Kingdom Protista, Kingdom Fungi, Kingdom Plantae, and Kingdom Animalia. So today we're going to give broad characteristics of who belongs to these kingdoms today, and in subsequent chapter we're going to talk about individual kingdoms one at a time. Now, the 6 kingdoms can be broadly divided into 2 different types of living things. The 2 bacterial kingdoms, the Archaebacteria and Eubacteria, are prokaryotes. In other words, if somebody asks you, give me a prokaryote, it's a very safe bet to say bacteria. So, Kingdom Archaebacteria, Kingdom Eubacteria are the only prokaryotes that are on the planet. And the other 4 kingdoms are all eukaryotes. The more advanced, they have intracellular organelles. And if you recall some of the salient features of eukaryotes compared to prokaryotes, or some of the more obvious apparent features of these living things, are that they have membrane-bound organelles like nucleus, endoplasmic reticulum, and mitochondria, etc. And the prokaryotes do not have those. So the 2 bacterial kingdoms, and understandably, if you consider them to be the ancient life on the planet, they are the prokaryotic kingdoms. The rest of them are eukaryotes. Further classifications, a little bit more understanding of this, that there are all unicellular prokaryotes. The Archaebacteria and Eubacteria are both unicellular. Now, the rest of these, as you can see, this is multicellular eukaryotes. A hybrid kingdom is the Protist, and that's why they're kind of in between. They can be unicellular living things, in other words, they're one-celled living things, or they can be multicellular living things. So protists are different in many different ways. So protists are kind of like in between. They can be unicellular living things, and then a one-cell living things, or they can be multicellular. They could be made of many cells. So all these are multicellular eukaryotes, and the protists can be multicellular or unicellular eukaryotes in nature. And the 2 bacterial kingdoms are prokaryotes, unicellular. So let's talk about these individually briefly. So the 2 prokaryotic kingdoms are the Archaebacteria and the Eubacteria. The oldest fossil for the prokaryotic fossils, if you recall, some 3.4 billion years ago. That's how old the prokaryotes are. And these can be heterotrophs, and autotrophs. In other words, they can generate their own energy, or they can get energy from somewhere else. And in terms of autotrophs, they can actually be photosynthetic. So plants are not the only things that are able to produce oxygen. In fact, these ancient bacteria are the first ones to produce oxygen as a byproduct of photosynthesis. They can also do a phenomenon called chemosynthetic, a different way of generating energy for themselves. So they can be heterotrophs, or they can be autotrophs. Now, if this is a general shape of a bacteria, if you recall from before, so bacteria have a cell wall, and it's a thick cell wall, and then they have a membrane, okay, and we're going to simplify ourselves. We're going to have like a membrane and a cell wall, and they have a DNA material in nondescript nucleus type area without a surrounding membrane. That's nucleoid area. And they have a cytoplasm. So this is a cartoon representation of the basic structure of a bacteria. You are probably intimately familiar with some of these. If you ever had strep throat, and this is Streptococcus, is a type of a bacteria, and that belongs to more modern bacteria, and this is kingdom Eubacteria. Now, of these two kingdoms, the Archaebacteria, or ancient bacteria, of course, are older in his evolutionary line. And it's thought that subsequently the Eubacteria are more newer, new kids from the block, so to speak. Kingdom Archaebacteria, there are some several hundred species of these that are found still. And that by itself is an impressive fact. If you can imagine, some of them, the first ones to these were some 3.4 billion years ago. Most of these live in extreme environments, because extreme environments of the present day kind of resemble the extreme environments of the Earth in its formative, in its beginning years of Earth's life. Right, Earth was a very violent place in its beginning, so that's the environment that they evolved in, and that's the environment that's most suitable for them. So therefore, currently, if you ever want to find these Archaebacteria, you would have to go to some pretty extreme places. So they live in extreme environments, the oxygen-free environment. That makes sense, because initially, if you recall, Earth did not have a lot of oxygen in its atmosphere. So they preferred to live in oxygen-free environments. For example, as in swamps. Swamps are a great place to find these. Deep ocean hydrothermal vents. You go to deep ocean, thermal vents are hot. Place, a terrible place to be, I think, and that's where you would find these. Their cell wall and their cell membrane composition is very different from the new kids on the block, the Eubacteria. Their cell wall, membrane composition, and DNA, ribosome, RNA are very different from other prokaryotes. So they have analogous membrane, cell wall, DNA, but they're very different from other bacteria, the newer bacteria of Eubacteria. Now, compare several hundred species to some 5,000 species of Eubacteria. Now, they get a bad reputation, right? Bacteria, germs, yikes, so to speak. But most of them are actually pretty harmless. And obviously, they can cause some devastating diseases as well. And the Streptococcus species, as you see before you, is an example. It causes strep throat and can cause many other things like meningitis, pneumonia, etc. They have a strong, vigorous cell wall, and they are actually less complex in genetic makeup. And they are found in most habitats. You better be washing your hands, because they're found pretty much everywhere. Examples are strep throat and pneumonia bacteria. So that's a basic overview of these two bacterial kingdoms, and as I said, we're going to talk about them in the near future in more detail. Then, how about this next category? Now, Protista, the kingdom Protista, to me at least, a very fascinating kingdom. It has some kind of pretty oddball or queer living things. Remember, they can be unicellular or multicellular in nature. So we're going to give examples of both of these. So here's kingdom Protista. These have become pretty interesting looking things of it. Euglena is a very popular. Amoeba is a popular protist. So the amoeba and you clean out these. You can find probably in your backyard, and they're everywhere. Slime mold, as you can probably also see around your neighborhood, and you probably didn't know what it was before. But we're going to study these. So, what's up with these, right? So they are eukaryotes, as we said first of all. They're not like bacteria. They are, they're like a chip on the shoulder. They are more advanced. They're eukaryotes. They can be unicellular, but mostly so they can be, as you said, unicellular or multicellular. They're still protists. They're not very complex. They don't have complex organ systems, etc. So they're reasonably simple compared to the higher kingdoms that we're going to talk about, fungi, plants, and animals, for example. Okay. Most live in moist environments. As I said, it's a puddle in your backyard. If you have a puddle in your backyard, you can probably find an amoeba or something in there. Or fossils, and they're some of the fossils of these guys can be found to some 2 billion years old. So they have been around on Earth longer than Homo sapiens have been around, apparently, at least. So they're very, very, very ancient creatures slugging around. Now, the thing about this is that if you recall, the higher kingdom, 3 higher kingdoms than these are the fungi, plants, and animals. So some of these protists have plant-like features, some of them have fungus-like features, and some of them have like animal-like features. In other words, they're like protists want to be fungi, protists want to be plants, and they're protists want to be animal, but they don't have enough characteristics of any of these to be categorized in any of those, though they get their own kingdom. So protists can be plant-like. In other words, protists can be autotrophs. They can do photosynthesis. Or they can be animal-like, meaning they eat other things. That's one of the cardinal features of animals. The main features of animals is that they eat other stuff. And fungus are decomposers. They can act like decomposers. So protists can be the chameleon. They can take different roles. They can be like plant, and they can be like fungi, and they can be like animal in their features, but not exactly. So that's why they're in a category of their own. And they include some of the most fascinating creatures here. And clearly, as I said, we have to pay attention to these because they have been around for a very long time. So here's a Paramecium, for example. It's a unicellular organism, and it's kind of moving around. It's very active. And those vacuoles that you see over there, they're not haphazard. They're actually pretty impressive things. And we will see when we have an opportunity to study them, inshallah. Now, this is another protist, and this is a slime mold. You dog vomit. You probably, as I said, you see probably this in the woods or in the backyard sometimes, and you don't quite know exactly what it is. You think a dog pooped or dog vomited or something, but no, this is actually a protist, and it's a living thing. This is a protist. It's a living thing. And what this is what is exactly, right? What it is exactly is, how is this a slime mold? How is it a living thing? What is exactly going on over here? What over here you see is a millions and billions of little protists, okay? And then sometime in their life cycle, believe it or not, there's an amoeba in there, okay? So this is like gazillions of amoeba at some time in their life cycle, and they all come together over here, so aggregating amoeba, right? And that's what they do, and they form these things. So these are big aggregates of protists, okay? And they move around. They're like living things that move around, and we will see that too, inshallah, in the future. But a single amoeba, see, it's not a planarian like that. A single amoeba is like this, what you see over here is an example of a protist. And it moves around. It's kind of like a slime slug moving around with these thingies called pseudopods, like a fake leg type things. And then it can go around and embrace other things, like Paramecium or something like that, try to eat, and then it eat it. So this one is clearly not photosynthetic. It's clearly like, I want to eat that guy type of amoeba, right? So here's an amoeba eating the Paramecium. So this is an example of a protist that wants to be like an animal. But what kind of animal is unicellular, right? So it doesn't quite make the grade to belong to an animal kingdom. So protists can be plant-like, protists can be animal-like, protists can be fungus-like. Now here's another example of a plant-like protist. Plant-like protist. Now this is Kelps. That's the tree-like, plant-like kelp, but it's not a plant-like. Okay, it's not a plant-like, but it is actually a protist. Okay, it's got those like amoeba type thing, type build, so to speak. So it's in the same category. It's a protist, not a plant. It's multicellular, but it does not have the same organs or organ systems as plants do. It's not as evolved. It's not as complex. So the kelp that you see over here, which is beautiful and used in fish tanks like these, big fish tanks, to make it look pretty and give it more ocean feel. These are actually not plants. These are a protist, a multicellular protist that look like plants. Now the remainder of the three kingdoms, the kingdom fungi. Now fungi, you wonder why do they have a category of them, but they're very distinct, very unique creatures, and they're one of the major decomposers of a planet. And that fungi's main job description is decomposers. That's what they do for a living, and they're not photosynthetic. Fungi don't make their own glucose. They're not photosynthetic. They're decomposers. They feed on other things. Some of them obviously are delicious, and people eat them, like morels over here. They're edible fungi that grow for only a few days in only a few places. Those apparently they're pretty expensive. Fungi are stationary heterotrophs. They're heterotrophs, meaning they're not primary producers. They don't do photosynthesis. They can be uni or multicellular eukaryotes, and there are, look at this, there are over 50,000 known species of fungi. Apparently, who knew? Lots of fungi. Here's some examples. So they can be on the ground, they can be on the trees, and interestingly, if you notice. If you see fungi on a tree, it's not a mark of health, is there? Yeah. It's interesting if you ever see a tree stump, a tree that's fallen, you will see a fungi on it, because that tree is dead and the fungi is a decomposer. So you will typically find these in areas of things, the places that things are rotting or dying, and because these are decomposers, it's more likely to find a fungi on a dead stump. And then there's a beautiful plant kingdom. So plants are extremely diverse living things, and they're all multicellular, and they're all photosynthetic eukaryotes with organ systems. What do I mean by organ systems? Like we have circulatory system, respiratory system, cardiovascular system, gastrointestinal. Those are systems. Right? Plants similarly have very highly developed systems like that, which we'll study also, inshallah. So plant kingdoms, they're all multicellular photosynthetic eukaryotes with organ systems. So if you want to define this kingdom, that's what you would have to enunciate. They're stationary. They usually have chloroplast and cell walls that's made up of cellulose. They usually have chloroplasts and cell walls made of cellulose. Cellulose is something that we cannot digest. That's bark. And humans can't digest that. Over 250,000 species of plants that are known, and unfortunately they're also dying very quickly. Now, plants, what do you mean by plant organs, right? So this too we shall study in detail in the future. But plant organ system, for example, roots. Well, roots are organs of the plants because they anchor the plant, they absorb mineral, they function as as gastrointestinal tract, for example, the human, because they absorb the mineral and nutrients from the ambient environment. And stems support and leaves, and they transport roots. They're like the cardiovascular system of the plant, so to speak. And leaves are the site of photosynthesis. And plants have reproductive organs, such as the flower and the seed. So the flower of a plant is, as we have seen before, that's the reproductive organ. So these are the major organ systems and organs of a plant. Okay, so that's what we mean, and that's pretty advanced if you'll say, Joe. And finally, the animal kingdom, of course. Animal kingdom, they're all multicellular heterotrophs. So they depend on energy in other living things. They're multicellular. And nearly all of them are mobile and with organ systems, with developed organ systems. And like you see over here, the lunamoths. So this is a lunamoth, and it has this antennae over here. The antennae that you see in the lunamoth are a part of its nervous system. It's a sense organ that's able to detect chemicals in the air, and which goes and it is able to analyze those chemicals. So these are pretty complicated living things, even though it appears quite small, and at first sight might not be as complicated, but nevertheless regarded as quite beautiful. So this is the animal kingdom, and so that was an overview of the six kingdoms: the two bacterial kingdoms, the prokaryotic bacterial kingdoms, the kingdom Archaebacteria and Eubacteria, and then the hybrid type of kingdom, the Protists, and then the kingdom of fungi and plants, and the animal kingdom. Inshallah, in subsequent chapters, we will talk about each of these individual kingdoms in detail. Until then, as-salatu wa-salamu ala rasulillah rabbil alamin. Assalamu alaikum.